University of Maryland here locally, College Park, as well as Harvard. And so he has been in the position as Secretary of, we recently changed the name to Veterans and Military Families, formerly known as Secretary of Maryland Veterans Affairs. And so we really appreciate all the great things he does. And so he will be part of this evening's panel and be bringing greetings here shortly. We also have, as part of the panel, someone else who I've had the honor of working with now for 6 years, and Miss Dana Burrow, who just picked up a new title. Every couple of years, she gets a different title. When I first met her, she was just Dana, and then all of a sudden, she was the program director for programs and advocacy, and now she is the deputy secretary for military, family, policy, and programs. And again, I mean, she's probably the most famous person on this call. She has a heart for veterans. She is the spouse of a veteran. I know that her son has just finished tech school down in Texas. And so she's the mother of a currently serving airman. And she really does have that heart for veterans. And if anytime there's any issues, one of the first people I call is Dana. So Dana, looking forward to your comments. I know you're probably tired of me always calling you, and I call her sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So I really appreciate everything that you do. We also have on our panel tonight Mr. Philip Munley. So I guess I have to take back momentarily those comments, those disparaging words I said about the Navy, because Mr. Munley, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the PAC Act, has spent over 20 years in the United States Navy. He holds VA national accreditation with the Veteran Service Administration, National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, California Department of Veterans Affairs, Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, American Legion, AMVETS, Military Order Purple Hearts, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Vietnam, Veterans of America, the Retired Enlisted Association, Navy Corps League, Non-Commissioned Officers. So Philip has done it all. And so we're looking forward to hearing your words, particularly with over 40 years of service, combined military and as a civilian serving our veterans. So look forward to hearing from you, and welcome to this evening's panel. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Danielle Davis, who is the state of Maryland's first veterans-owned small business enterprise compliance manager with the Governor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs. Since taking this role in November of 2021, she has tripled the state's certified veteran-owned small business database, digitized the Veteran Service Business Enterprise certification process, and hosted many trainings, of which I've had the pleasure and honor of attending. But she has the nickname of being the queen in Maryland of VSB, and she really is. And so every time I find out an event that she's at, I try to be there, hoping that some of that knowledge will seep into my brain, and I will become that much more informed about all the great things that she's doing for our state and for veterans. So Danielle, thank you for being on the panel this evening. And so at this point, we know this year's theme for Veterans Day is the legacy of service. And what I'd like to do is ask a couple of the other chairs of the General Assembly to just bring greetings very quickly before we turn it over to Secretary Tony Wisdom. We'll start with Delegate Janelle Wilkins, who's the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's wonderful to be here with you tonight. And thank you so much to Delegate Rogers for all of his leadership across our state when it comes to veterans issues. We're proud to have him as a member of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland. And again, I'm Janelle Wilkins. I serve as the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland, the largest Black caucus in the entire country. We have many veterans who are many members who are veterans within our caucus and help ensure that we are advocating and supporting the needs of our veterans. So we are really proud of the service of our members and the service that you have given to our country. This week we had an election and we were able to do that because of the fight and the service of so many. And that's why we are a free country. So thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for your service. The Black Caucus stands with you, and have a wonderful and productive evening.
Thank you so much, Chair Wilkins. And so at this time, I'd like to turn it over to another member of the Legislative Black Caucus, but who does so many things for veterans and women veterans, and allow her to bring greetings on behalf of women veterans, and that's my good friend, Delegate Edith Patterson.
Thank you, Delegate Rogers. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, and I have the pleasure of the 23-24 session to serve as president of the Women's Caucus. In that role, I've been a member of the caucus for the past 12 years, but of those 12 years, 7, I have the pleasure of serving as a chair of the Women's Veterans Program at the U.S. Capitol. Why is that important? Because oftentimes we don't always understand the specific needs, special needs, as well as the creative, rewarding roles women have played. There were several women that we have had as guests, including I always get it wrong, 688?
6888.
6888 women who are somewhere ages 80 through 100. They were present and received awards. This was brought to us by none other than Delegate Rogers, who's also an associate member of the Women's Caucus. We know that as a country, women have made tremendous strides and contributions, and it's our pleasure to be partners in the caucus while we're in Annapolis. And lastly, I will say I represent District 28, which is in Charles County. I'm the wife of a retired Army veteran and the stepmother, West Porter. So go Army, beat Navy. We love you.
Here we go. All right. All right. All right. So with that, I know that we're anticipating for the chair of the Legislative Latino Caucus, Delegate Ashanti Martin, to join us. But until he gets here, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce some of my other colleagues. We're happy to have on here from Montgomery County, Delegate Pam Queen. We also have with us this evening Delegate Shanika Henson. And then I also see on the call Delegate Cheryl Pasteur. So we want to thank you all for joining us and this evening, and welcome any questions that you might have. But without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Secretary Tony Woods.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. I really appreciate you organizing tonight, and as always, for inviting me and members of my department to have an opportunity to speak. I wanted to make sure that I had both Dana and Phil here because good leaders know to defer to those with all the wisdom and all the skill. And I brought two folks who I think are going to really represent the department well tonight. So I wanted to keep my remarks relatively brief. What I was sort of thinking about as we kind of led into this Veterans Day holiday or Veterans Week or Veterans Month, as it's starting to become, is I've been reflecting a lot on the veterans who have had a positive impact on my life. And so I was starting to think back to as the kids say, the late 1900s when I was growing up. And, I was thinking back at that time, we didn't really use the term hero or heroes a lot when we were talking about veterans and those who have served. And, I was thinking for myself, I was similar, right? I called these folks mom, I called them granddad, I called them coach. Or I was thinking back to my middle school social studies teacher, Mr. Allen, who was a Korean War veteran who taught well into his 70s, who helped me know that the world was a much bigger place than I realized as a kid living in the Bay Area. Or Mr. Gordon, our neighbor, a Vietnam veteran, Air Force veteran, who realized that a young person like me who was growing up without a dad needed someone to teach him how to fish, right? And so for me, that was the embodiment of what it meant to be a veteran. People who kind of made the ordinary things extraordinary. And when they took off the uniform of military service, they actually, really donned the title of veteran. And that for them was the commencement of something that was new. And, I've been thinking about more often than not in this role about the use of the term hero and why I kind of sometimes think it has a double-edged effect, right? On one hand, we know that when people say this, it's out of a deep sense of gratitude for those who are willing to risk it all for their country. But what it also has the potential of doing is implying that that service member or that veteran's best days are behind them. And I think the reality is we all know that the best days for our veterans are actually ahead. And one thing I've been reflecting on a lot is here in Maryland, we are home to some really incredible veterans who every single day are giving back in incredible ways. And so you can look at this call right here and see veterans who are doing exactly that. So Delegate Rogers, I'll call you out, of course, for your service. I'm appreciative of your service, but then realizing that you had more to give to your community. I think about my colleagues in the cabinet, Secretary Jake Day, who leads our Department of Housing and Community Development, Secretary Laura Herrera Scott, an Army doctor who realized that she had a lot more service to give and is leading that department incredibly well. And then, of course, I don't need to say it, but we are led by an incredible governor who also is a veteran. And one of the things I've appreciated most about him and his leadership is taking that ethos of leave no one behind that we all know about and hear about from the military and turning that into a governing philosophy that guides how we work every single day. And so I'm just thinking about these are veterans who have found incredible ways to give back to their community and to their country, depending on the situation. Danielle, she sees it every day in her work, veterans who are helping our economy thrive. And Phil sees it every day in his work, connecting veterans to the benefits that they've earned so they can find new ways to give back and contribute in new ways and really fuel their next chapter here in Maryland. So with that, I also just want to acknowledge not every veteran transitions successfully. And that's why our department has been working incredibly hard to improve access. And Phil has done an incredible job of driving down wait times for those who want to get an appointment with our accredited veteran benefit specialists so they can gain access to their benefits. It's why we're partnering with nonprofits all across the state to do more for veterans. And frankly, it's why we changed our name, just to recognize the role that families play in helping our veterans thrive, especially when times get tough. And so with that, it's my privilege to now turn it over to Dana, who has, now you're at 11 years here in the department. When this role was created, the Deputy Secretary for Military Family Policy and Programs, there was no one else I could think of who was better qualified to fill this role. Given her experience as a military spouse, then a veteran spouse, now a military mom, she knows exactly the sacrifices that our military families make and that our veteran families make in service to the country. And so I'm excited that she's going to be able to share a little bit of her perspective. And then, of course, I know Dana will then turn it over to Phil, who will talk about the PACT Act. So I'll say thank you in advance to both of them, and I'll go off camera here.
So, Secretary, if I could, first, let me just thank you for your leadership and all the great things that you're doing. I've had the opportunity to work with your department for 6 years, and the energy and finesse that you brought to the military department of veterans and military families has been noteworthy. It's an honor to serve with you, and I'm incredibly proud of all the great things you're doing. And so thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your continued service. And for those that don't know, actually, Secretary Woods wears two hats. He's still serving in the reserves at the Pentagon in a strategic position while continuing to serve our state. So thank you again for your incredible leadership. And if I could very quickly, I wanted to bring in the the chair of the Legislative Latino Caucus, just to bring quick greetings before we transition to Dana. So Delegate Martinez, if you would.
Thank you so much, Delegate Rogers, for the opportunity and the invitation. It's so good to see Secretary Woods and some other familiar faces. I am Maryland State Delegate Ashanti Martinez. I have the honor and privilege of representing Maryland's 22nd Legislative District, which is in northern Prince George's County, and also serving as the chair for the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus. I am just really inspired by the work that my colleague, Mike Rogers, continues to do to serve military families. I'm a son of a Marine veteran, and so I know very intimately the sacrifice that goes into service for all of us. And I'm just incredibly honored that I get to serve on the Health and Government Operations Committee, continuing to serve military families every single day with the work that we do day in and day out in Annapolis. And know that the caucus sees you, know that our community in Annapolis sees you, and we're working very hard to make sure that you have everything that you need. And so, Delegate, thank you so much for the opportunity and reaching out. I am also on the run. You can imagine it's a Thursday night, so there's many community events. And so I am actually just finished a lecture series at PGCC, and I'm on to my next meeting in the community. So I won't be able to join you for the rest of this call, but I appreciate the opportunity to reach out, and know that you can always reach out to my office or the caucus for any help or support or service. We're here to serve each and every one of you. So thank you.
Well, Delegate Martinez, thank you for joining us, and we do understand that you have to go, but thank you for your leadership and thank you for your partnership. And we look forward to continuing to work with the Legislative Latino Caucus and all the things that you're doing, and particularly on HCO, because for those that don't know, there's a lot of veterans legislation that goes through HCO. So we really appreciate your support there. And again, understand that you have to run, but thank you for taking the time to dial in. And so
wouldn't have missed this. Thanks, guys.
Without further ado, we'll take it to the Deputy Secretary, Dana Burrow.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Delegate Rogers and our friends in the General Assembly. Thank you, Delegate and Secretary Woods, for your kind words of introduction. I'm trying to share my screen, but I think I might be sharing the wrong screen here, so...
I can see it fine. Yeah, if you want to click slideshow, it'll be good.
Okay, so you can see the the slide deck. Perfect.
That's right.
So, as was mentioned by Delegate Rogers, I've had the honor of serving with the Department of Veterans and Military Families since the fall of 2013, and in July, I was incredibly honored to be appointed to my new position, Deputy Secretary for Military Family Policy and Programs. And as Delegate Rogers indicated, as a former military spouse and now military mom to an active duty airman, the lens that I am seeing my work through now has shifted some. For the past 11 years, well, really going on 13 years, because I was with Maryland's Commitment to Veterans before, I was centered on veterans, which was an incredible, humbling honor. As the granddaughter to an Army Staff Sergeant who was at Omaha, and the great-granddaughter to a Gold Star mom who lost her son during World War II. I was very centered in the veteran space for the last 11 years, but it's been a real honor in the last 6 months to pivot a little and shift the work that I'm doing, because I do believe wholeheartedly that our military families serve too, whether it's our spouses, our survivors, our caregivers, our dependent children and youth. They serve as well, and it's just really exciting to be shifting into this space. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who our military families are here in the state of Maryland. I think it's really important to level set and have an understanding of the population that we serve. Here in the state of Maryland, we have just under 50,000 total military force, and that's comprised of active duty as well as our National Guard and our reservists. When we look at our active duty family members, just under 40,000. I always like to highlight kids as a mom of 2 veteran-connected children. About 62% of our active duty family members are dependents. And a little under 40% of our active duty service members are married with children. The interesting thing that I've been paying particular attention to is the fact that 75% of our military families nationally do not live on military installations. And as a state with more than 10 active duty military installations and National Guard armories, I think it's important when we're talking about policy and programs that we are mindful that our military families are in our communities, and we need to be responding to that. We are taking a very data-informed approach in the work that we do, being very mindful of research and surveys. Surveys that indicate that military spouse unemployment is still hovering at around 21, 22%, and we are laser focused on driving that rate down. We're taking a look at the fact that more than 52% or more than 50% of our active duty military children are attending a public school. And we need to be mindful of that. And when we are elevating awareness and the experiences of military kids as they're transitioning in and out of our public schools. And we're also paying particular attention as well to food insecurity and working diligently with partners in the community to drive down those rates. So what are we doing as a state? What have we done so far? And what are we going to be doing in the coming months and into 2025? First and foremost, I think we're doing a really good job of raising awareness of the experience of military families. And we also know that when our military families, our veteran families are thriving, that means that our service members and our veterans are thriving as well. We want to ensure that we have a force that is ready to respond to whatever might come their way. And in order for them to be able to do their job, we need to have thriving military families supporting them on the home front. In December of 2023, Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller designated this current calendar year as Year for the Military Families. And as someone who has been with the department since 2013, I have not seen such energy and excitement around raising awareness of the needs of our military families, and it is evidenced by the actions that are being taken by the administration. As Delegate Rogers indicated earlier, the Secretary mentioned our department name changed in July, and I was appointed to a new position representing military family policy and programs for the state. We saw a record number of bills that were passed in support of our veterans and military families, to include the Family Serve Act, which is creating stronger pathways to employment for our military spouses, both in the public and private sector. Our Time to Serve Act doubled military leave for state employees who are also currently serving in the Guard Reserve, making sure that they, when they're using their personal time off, that they're able to use it for spending time with family and not using it when they're activated on orders. Also established this year was the Maryland Commission on Veterans and Military Families. The commission was established to develop a strategic plan for making Maryland the best state for veterans and military families. I have the honor of chairing that commission, and to our friends from the General Assembly who are with us here tonight, I am tracking that report, and I am doing everything to make sure that it is submitted in a timely manner on its due date of December 1st of this year. In addition, we are working to strengthen existing partnerships and establish new ones through our initiative, Maryland Joins Forces. It was established in 2023 to mobilize partners across the public and private sector to respond to the needs of our veterans and military families. We now have just under 18 memorandums of agreement signed with Maryland Joins Forces partners, and we have a few on the front burner, hopefully to see signed in the coming weeks. We are focusing on 5 core areas as part of Maryland Joins Forces, and we are partnering with organizations like Blue Star Families, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the Travis Manion Foundation, Towson, the University of Baltimore. I could go on, but just really, really exciting work doing as part that we're doing as part of Maryland Joins Forces here in the state. Some additional action steps that have been taken this year. Maryland became a 4+1 state, which is a Hiring Our Heroes initiative, encouraging employers to adopt military spouse-friendly policies. We are now a partner to the Department of Defense's Military Spouse Employment Partnership that allows us to post job announcements, job postings in a database that is managed by the DoD that military spouses have access to, and we are now tracking hires of military spouses to Maryland state governments. In addition, earlier this year, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation designated the state of Maryland as a Hidden Heroes state, which was very, very exciting for us. It is enabling us to partner with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation to raise awareness of the needs and the experiences of our military and veteran caregivers. In addition, this year, our governor, Governor Moore, became the first governor to be announced as the honorary chair to the Blue Star Families National Governors Association Do Your Part initiative. What this initiative is doing, it is surveying states and asking them what are their best practices, what policies, programs, initiatives have they implemented within their states. Once all of the information is collected, all of that information is going to be published in a nationwide state-based toolkit that will be shared across the country to ensure that we are implementing best practices in support of our military and veteran families across the country. So lots and lots of energy, lots of activity, lots of things going on. But I will say that although 2024 might be coming to an end, I believe that we are just getting started in this work. We are partnering with our local veterans commissions to ensure they're aware of the Purple Star Schools program. We are going to be meeting with all of our Maryland Joint Forces partners here in the next 2 weeks to do vision setting and action planning for the coming years. We are sponsoring a Family Caregiver Support Month webinar on November 22nd, and we will be hosting our first Military Installation Community Partner Summit in December in partnership with Fort Meade. So I know I went over a lot of things in a very short period of time, but I just want to reiterate how excited I am to be in this role and to be a part of a department that is laser focused on supporting our military and veteran families. And with that, I will give the time back to the delegate. Thank you, Delegate Rogers.
Dana, thank you so much. And again, I think I speak for most of the folks on the call, because I think probably everybody on the call knows you for the incredible work you do for veterans and their families. And we're excited to see you in your new role. And I know that that's just going to expand all the great things that are available for veterans. And again, thank you so much for what you do. With that, we'll transition over to Mr. Philip Munley. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Delegate Rogers. Good evening, everyone. May I say, Delegate Rogers,
Recording in progress.
You must be living the dream there, being the delegate with the constituents in Anne Arundel County, the home of our nation's premier, might I add, service academy with the United States Naval Academy. So congratulations to you, sir. Secretary, I wish everyone a happy Veterans Day, and for any of our Marine Corps friends that may be on the call, happy Marine Corps birthday, which is on November the 10th. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Secretary Woods asked me just to kind of give a brief update on anything going on with the PACT Act. The PACT Act, of course, is the Sergeant Heath Robinson honoring our promise to address Comprehensive Toxins Act of 2022. The PACT Act expanded access to VA benefits for veterans who served during the Gulf War era or post 9/11 or during Vietnam. So what it did for our Gulf War or our post 9/11 veterans, it added 20 new presumptive conditions that if they served in certain locations in after September 11, 2001 in Afghanistan, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Uzbekistan, Yemen, or after August 2nd, 1990 in Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia. If any of these conditions are ever diagnosed for them in their lifetime, they are now presumed to have been caused by that service and their exposure to burn pits. Pretty significant piece of legislation for veterans who served during those areas who had been coming up with these things, these unknown cancers or these illnesses, who had been filing claims and who had been getting denied for those claims. The PACT Act changed all that. What it also did is it opened up 2 new presumptive conditions to our Vietnam veterans. And more importantly, what it did is it opened up 5 new locations in Southeast Asia where Vietnam veterans are now considered to have been exposed to Agent Orange if they served in any of those areas. My wonderful staff, which we're located in 15 locations throughout the state of Maryland, 7 inside of the Motor Vehicle Administration, are there to assist a veteran, a dependent, or a survivor in applying for these benefits. We'll meet with these individuals.
Is anybody coming tonight, you think?
Will, if you could mute yourself.
Yeah, it's already 6:30.
Sorry about that, Mr. Munley.
So that's okay, no problem. So we'll meet with these veterans one-on-one. We'll review their individual circumstances of service, and then we'll help them file claims in order to establish service connection for those conditions. Once they establish service connections, kind of really life-changing stuff. The first thing, there can be a monetary benefit, of course, associated with that. But even more importantly, is then free health care provided from the VA for that condition for the rest of their life, which can be just life-changing stuff. It is important to note, though, that the PACT Act is specific to the era and the location the veteran served. What our federal partners do in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, they do a great job of disseminating information and getting information out to the veterans to contact someone to get information about the PACT Act. They don't really give them the specifics. They just ask them to kind of reach out. And then when they reach out to us, we're kind of giving them the specifics that kind of help them through that process. So we partner very closely with the federal VA and just providing a lot of education to our veterans, their dependents, their spouses, their survivors, and making sure that they know exactly what it is that they're filing for and the process. We partner, 4 times a year, we hold PACT Act claim clinic and resource fairs throughout the state. We just held one yesterday, as a matter of fact, up at the Berry Point VA Medical Center. 90 individuals attended that event, generated numerous claims. Right after the PACT Act was signed into law in August of 2022, we held a claims clinic up in Berry Point. There was a surviving spouse there of a Vietnam veteran who she was in her 70s, looking to retire. She had been filing a claim for DIC for many years, contending that her husband, who served in Thailand, was exposed to Agent Orange. At that time, Thailand was not recognized as a condition where a veteran could have been considered exposed to Agent Orange. The PACT Act changed that. When she came in that day, she was ecstatic to hear that Thailand was now considered a location. In her 70s, looking to retire, couldn't retire because her Social Security and a little bit of a pension she was going to get wasn't going to be enough. We were able to get her dependency indemnity compensation, DIC benefits, annuity payment that was going to help her make ends meet for the rest of her life, along with over $100,000 retro from the VA. And so this kind of all came together. So those are the kind of stories, and those are the kind of things that just keep us going every day to be able to help folks out. Locally or nationally, I want to say, PACT Act claims, since this is a start, the VA has processed more than 1.6 million claims. They've granted 1.2 million of those claims, so about 75%, and they've issued over $7.2 billion in retroactive benefits to veterans and their dependents or survivors. Locally in Maryland, they've processed about 10,000 claims. Just over 6,000 of those have been approved, with over $32 million in retroactive benefits paid out. So that's the quick update. We're open for business Monday through Friday. If you haven't, I provided a little handout that discussed the PACT Act and all the presumptives related to exposure to the burn pits and Agent Orange. You're welcome to share those with anyone. And we're happy. We encourage everyone, if they even think that they were exposed, to please reach out and utilize the services of an accredited representative before they move forward into this process.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mullen. You just answered my question. I saw in the chat, Delegate Patterson wanted to thank you and is very appreciative of the information that you provided, but was looking for that contact information. So thank you for providing that. And thank you for what you and all your service officers across the state do every day. A lot of people don't realize the life-changing position that puts folks in who are able to receive their benefits, no matter what stage of life that happens to be. But and that also represents a significant economic impact to the state. So that wouldn't be possible without the great work that you and your service officers provide on a daily basis. So thank you so much. So with that, I guess we'll turn to the Queen, and we'll let you talk about all the great things and entrepreneurship for veterans.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you, Delegate Rogers, for having me again this year. So very excited. We go over just a little bit about our office, and if you're unfamiliar with the Governor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, I somehow, some way, am going to get veteran in there one of these days, as I am an Army brat from Alaska. And my uncle also served in Vietnam. So know that I am one of the biggest advocates in the state of Maryland for our veterans. Just to highlight our office, we oversee 3 socioeconomic preference procurement programs for the state of Maryland that lie within over 70 different state agencies that make up the entire state contracting arena for the state. Specifically, my position is over the veteran-owned program, or what we call as fondly as the VSBE program. We're all very aware of all of the acronyms and alphabet soup, but I do want to highlight that even though on the federal side, a lot of people are familiar with the service disabled veteran-owned certification and the veteran-owned certification, that we do not differentiate within the state. We have one for our veterans, and that is called the VSBE. And that federal does not supersede our state certification. Those that are also unaware of the other 2 programs that our office oversees, which is the MBE, the Minority Business Enterprise, and the SBR, which will be getting a new name change very shortly next year to our Certified Small Business Program. Both the MBE and the VSBE are prime contracting and subcontracting programs, while our Certified Small Business Program is for prime contracting only. I'm a numbers girl. At the end of the day, I love to sit here and talk about our programs, but I want to talk about the money and understanding that there are millions of dollars that are funneled down and awarded to our 3 socioeconomic preference procurement groups. Specifically for the VSBEs, I'm very proud that in fiscal year 23, we awarded over $35 million, and that's growing every day. Especially, I can't wait to announce what's coming or what was spent in FY24. Those numbers will be published in January, and just know that there is a great uptick. And so since becoming the first manager of this program in just 3 years, we have made great strides, establishing a lot of program information about this, about the VSBE program. So the biggest thing that I wanted to announce was that Governor Moore announced in September, with the help of our office, increasing our VSBE participation goal to a statewide goal of 3%. Previously, it was at 1%, but we have been able to show via data that there are veterans out here. We have over 52,000 veteran-owned small business owners within the state of Maryland. So there is plenty of room for growth. But if I leave here today without, letting you know that representation matters. that is the thing that I really want to hit home on this call, and highlight, is that having veteran small business representation in the certification realm here within the state is so important, because many of our state agencies and departments use our public databases to establish veteran goals on qualifying contracts and solicitations. But if there are not 3 businesses in those databases to consider placing a VSBE goal on a specific solicitation or contract, then they can't even place a goal on the contract. So making sure that we get this out to the community, knowing the amount of veteran small business owners within the state, getting them familiar with the 3-step certification process, which is completely digitalized now. There is no sending in, DD 214s in the mail like when I first started during COVID. So just to kind of briefly go over how easy this process is the first step is our vendors creating a vendor registration in our Maryland Marketplace Advantage platform, which is really the home base of where the state of procurement lies within the state of Maryland. Then they can opt to either use their federal SDVOSB or VOSB certification for their veteran verification, or we have a state path. Thanking very much with the amazing help of Mr. Munley and the Department of Veteran and Military Families, as we work closely to complete that state path. They can upload their DD 214 in the ALMA portal system. And then going over and answering the 3 eligibility questions in the VSBE application, which is the business a small business defined by SBA standards? Is the business at least 51% owned and operated and controlled by a veteran or veterans? And is the business for profit? So really just wanting to let everyone know that, representation matters, and get certified in these in our database, because not only do our procurement officers need that information to set those goals, but also the community uses our public database as well to help support certified veteran-owned businesses. So other than that, just wanting to let you guys know that the business does not have to be in the state of Maryland in order to get certified. That's a very good question that we normally get. And another thing that I want to announce, although we do outreach across the entire state, last year I started a pilot program going to different counties to help our veterans get registered and certified in this program, understanding that sometimes they do need a little bit more assistance in person, and that we're not just all virtual. So I am very happy to announce that starting in January, we will be our office, myself, will be going to a different county every month next year and doing those in-person certification workshops. We'll be starting in January down in Waldorf, down in Charles County, and literally going across the state all next year. So something new that we're doing and exciting, in addition to having this 3% raised goal and really honing into our VSBE liaisons of putting these goals, these veteran goals, on these contracts, so that this money funnels down to the pockets in our economy of our veterans. All right, that's pretty much. I'm gonna leave some time for some Q&A in case anyone needs it, and then my contact information.
All right. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for that wonderful information, and thank you for everything that you do. I would be remiss if as I'm giving out my thanks, and before we go to any questions, Anne Arundel County Television assisting us tonight. So as I mentioned early on, this is being televised on Anne Arundel County Public Television. And I see we have some special guests, other special guests that are on, Bob Norton, the former chair president of the Maryland Military Coalition. And I see Gary Palmer, who's the state chair for and president of the Military Officers Association of America. Linda Anderson, who's, really a treasure. If you've ever been to Walter Reed, she's been there. I served with her there and just did amazing work. And so, Linda, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And then, President Emeritus, Jim Schifrin, for the Military Officers Association here at Fort Meade. Again, things like this don't just happen. And so at this point, before we take the picture, Gloria, we're going to do a big screenshot of everybody on the screen. So we're going to ask you to come on camera for a minute. But are there any questions out there for any of our panelists? And I know I saw earlier the Veterans Commission chair from Frederick County, Will Plumley. I think he had to take off. But are there any questions for any of our esteemed panelists this evening?
So, Delegate, I did get the question for Will. It was the point of contact for Mr. Munley, but several people was asking that. So I dropped the information, Mr. Munley, that I got out of your email. If there's a different point of contact that you want me to drop in the chat, let me know, and I can do that as well.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And then also there was a few other questions that Ms. Burrell answered. Ways to donate for Charlotte Hall tomorrow in the future. That was a question that we got, that Nicole got texted, your chief of staff got texted in. And then also about the upcoming event that Ms. Burrell spoke about. But she's dropped that information in the chat, and the chat will still be available for everyone. And then there was a question from Mr. Gary Palmer, says Secretary Burrell, I've been monitoring the commission virtual meetings and found them well ran and informative. Have you heard or seen anything that really surprised you and might lead to some new recommendations? That's from Gary Palmer.
So I started to respond in the chat, but I did say that thank you to Gary for the kind feedback. And I mentioned that it must be the former college professor coming out in me, because I think I'm very much chairing the commission like a college adjunct professor and giving the commissioners lots of assignments that they may or may not enjoy. But it has really helped to propel us forward in the development of the report. But I would say, well, actually two things. One is ensuring that we're making data-informed policy recommendations. A lot of the data that we have is national data. And we as a collective have had a lot of conversation around that's national data, but how is Maryland performing in comparison to the country as a whole or perhaps other states? So we've had some really good conversations around data. And the other thing that I would say is, in addition to making policy recommendations in our report, one of the things that we have discussed, especially during our last two meetings, is the need to create a sense of community. And this comes from some of the remarks that I have heard come from the governor saying, for our military families who may only be here for 2, 4, 6 years, we want them to feel a part of our community. We want them to feel welcome here. We want this to feel like home for them when they are here. So we've been especially mindful the last couple of meetings to talk about how do we create that community in addition to making policy recommendations that may or may not require legislation. It's how do we create a culture of community for our military families. So I'd say those are the two big things.
And Dana, that's probably a good segue to let everybody know that next Thursday, from 1:30 to 3, the Maryland Military Coalition, which represents 22 different military service organizations and veteran service organizations, will be holding a listening session at the Bush Library. And I believe that Secretary Woods, as well as some members from his staff, may be there. I know the TAG, Major General Burkhead, will be there. And this meeting is open to the public. And one of the things that they're going to be talking about is their list of priorities for this upcoming session. And myself and Senator Jackson, just two co-chairs for the Maryland General Assembly Veterans Caucus, which I didn't say earlier, but I'll say it now, is the largest, with 81 members, largest Veterans Caucus in the country. Also happens to be very bipartisan, with both Republicans and Democratic members in both the House and Senate side. But we're going to be listening, and we're going to be listening to some of those things that are important to the different advocacy organizations, and taking a look at, what's within the realm of the possible, given sort of where we are as a state. But as was stated earlier, some of the smaller things that may not have a big price tag are important to military and family members. So we're going to look at all those things that we can get done, but we'll certainly be listening to those kind of ideas, just sort of like Dana shared. And then going back to Gloria's earlier point. So I think this is the 5th year where we've collected toiletries. It started during the pandemic under Secretary Owens' administration, where we found out what some of the needs were there. And for the past 5 years, we've been collecting those in our local communities. This is really a statewide effort. And so we'll be making that delivery tomorrow. But the need is not just tomorrow, it's throughout the year. So to Gloria's point, and I know that Dana put it in the chat, if you want to assist Charlotte Hall, there's a point of contact in the chat that you can reach out to find out if there are other specific things. I know a lot of times VFWs and American Legions kind of do donations on their own throughout the year, and they are incredibly appreciative. As my colleague Brian Crosby, who represents St. Mary County, said a couple of years ago when we went down there, we may very well be living there one day. So let's try to make a positive impact and help those veterans whose shoulders we really stand upon. So with that, do we have any other questions from folks in the audience?
One more to Secretary Burrow from Mr. Palmer.
I guess I can come online and ask it. Secretary Burrow, I've been looking at the Maryland Joint Forces website, and I see there's none of the traditional VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations there, MOA, VFW, American Legion. And I'm kind of surprised by that. And I just wondered if you've been contacted by anybody and had some information to add. Perhaps it just doesn't fit, so we couldn't find a way to be together. But I would assume it would be, if anything, it would be an area of 5 volunteer service, but there may be other thoughts that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an excellent question. Since my appointment in July, I will say I've been mostly responsive to interest from organizations as opposed to having the opportunity to do a lot of outreach. What I did not share is I have a running spreadsheet of all of our partners that we have MOAs with, but I also am starting a list of organizations that I want to reach out to make the pitch and to talk with them about Maryland Joint Forces and encourage them to become a part of this work. I think that there is a lot of overlap between the 5 pillars of Maryland Joint Forces and the work being done by our traditional veteran service organizations, whether it's volunteer service. I believe the American Legion does some work in the employment support space. I think that there's a lot of overlap within health and wellness and the Legion's suicide prevention campaign. So lots of overlap, and definitely open to discussion with organizations that want to learn more and to talk about how they can get involved.
All right, thank you. I'll send out an email as it requests in the on the website and see if I can talk with you a little bit more. Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Right. Time for one last question because we said we'd have you off by 7, and so we want to be respectful of your time. Any one last question from the group? Seeing none, what I will do is take this opportunity again to just thank all of our panelists and thank everyone on the call for joining in, and especially want to thank my colleagues, Delegate Patterson, Delegate Queen, Delegate Pasteur, Delegate Hempson. I mean, we've got pretty much the state covered: Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Charles County, Baltimore County. So thank you all for showing up and participating. And I know that you all are very actively involved in what we do in the Veterans Caucus. And finally, these events don't just happen. So want to shout out Nicole Butler, my chief of staff, and Gloria Dent, who I don't know how she does it, but she has her own logistics business, her own veterans nonprofit. She's also on the Anne Arundel County School Board. She's a retired command sergeant major. That's how she does it, because that's what retired command sergeant majors do. They do it all. And so, but Gloria, my battle buddy, we've been doing this for 6 years. So just thank you for just making things happen. So really appreciate you. And with that, thank you all for joining. Good night. Happy Veterans Day. Happy Marine Corps birthday.
Delegate, I need a picture.
Oh, she wants to take the picture. So if everybody would come on screen one more time.
Seconds. I won't post it on Facebook, I promise.
She won't, but I might. I'm always looking for a current situation.
Got it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Go back, Nicole.